It's Monday, August 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now feeling like 31. It's 22 degrees in Ottawa, 23 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. As the number of COVID-19 cases continues rising in Ontario, the call for a vaccine passport have been growing louder. Sources tell City News the provincial government will announce some sort of proof of vaccine plan this week.
We could get the details of a proof of vaccination plan from the Ford government in the next few days. Sources also suggesting Premier Doug Ford and his cabinet may be back here at Queen's Park as early as tomorrow to finalize the details of the plan. Now, the government finally bending on this issue after weeks of rejecting the idea, saying your paper receipt is sufficient proof. The vast majority of new COVID infections in Ontario are happening among people not fully vaccinated, and public health experts say a proof of vaccination system would be key in limiting the risk of virus transmission in group settings. The list of workplaces, venues, and public spaces requiring proof of vaccination is growing. BC and Quebec already introducing smartphone-based vaccine passports. Manitoba has a firm vaccine card. I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into some clearing today. Plenty of sunshine for the afternoon, the high 29, but becoming less humid. Tonight, mainly clear, 16, and tomorrow, a comfortable high 26, sun and cloud, just a slight chance of a shower. For today, the high 29.
And right now, feeling in the low 30s, 22 degrees in Ottawa, 23 in Smiths Falls. Hurricane Ida is no more. It's now a tropical storm, but still threatening. Power remains out for the entire city of New Orleans, taking down the backup system for the city's stormwater pumps as well. Torrential rain continues to fall over Mississippi, half a meter expected in some places. The hurricane made landfall exactly 16 years to the day after Hurricane Katrina ravaged both Louisiana and Mississippi. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau has a busy day on the campaign trail today after a rough ride yesterday in Ontario from a crowd of protesters. His campaign stop in Cambridge on climate change assailed by people protesting pandemic measures. Trudeau begins his day. He's in Granby, Quebec this morning. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has a multi-provincial day ahead, starting off in Ottawa, though, but then flying out to BC for a meet and greet. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is sticking around the Greater Toronto area today. The OPP still has a section of the 401 closed for a fatal collision investigation. A single vehicle rolled between Napanee and Odessa. Now, 3 people were in the car. 1 person pronounced dead at the scene. 2 others taken to hospital with injuries. Those injuries have not been released. Detours are currently in place. City News Time, 9:03. After a water main break on Du Park in Rockland, that area is out of water. Municipality confirms a water main break completely drained the water tower on St. Joseph Street. Clarence Rockland is on site now working to fix the broken water main and says currently no timeline for how long that's going to take. The city says they have set up portable toilets in the City Hall parking lot on Laurier Street. The next phase of the Carleton Place Hospital Emergency Room fundraiser kicked off over the weekend. Now, $3.4 million of the original $3 million goal has been raised just in the past 2 years. But the Hospital Foundation says pandemic delays and rising costs mean the goal had to be boosted now to $4 million. The foundation tells Inside Ottawa Valley fundraisers will range from music festivals like the Jock River Jam that was held this past weekend. Foundation says whatever community fundraisers can be held, from a gala to a lemonade stand, will all help raise cash. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And so begins another week. Another week on the campaign trail. Another week in the fourth wave. Another week with vaccine passports in the news. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. 21 days to go. As of today, that's it. 3 full weeks in the federal election campaign. And what do the polls say today? Let's take a look at that daily polling fix. Nanos, nightly tracking. It's the Conservatives in the lead. Conservatives, 32.7. Liberals, 31.3. NDP, 20 even. 20 even for the New Democrats. Ecos, nightly tracking. Big changes. Big changes from this time last week. It's the Conservatives in the lead, and it is a shockingly wide lead. Conservatives, 36.7. Liberals, 29.1. Still below 30. NDP, 17.7. 1 week ago, this same pollster had the Liberals in the lead, 32.9, 31.7 for the Conservatives. How's that for a week in politics? They say a week is a lifetime in politics. There you go, right there. Main Street Research, iPolitics, asking if a federal election were held today, which party would you vote for? Conservatives, 36. Liberals, 27.4. 27.4. NDP, 17.8. That would be rounding off a 9-point lead for the Conservative Party of Canada. And people are starting, I see it out there on Twitter, okay, pollsters, starting to say the M word as in majority. Majority for the Conservatives. Not so fast. But then you have comments from like very, very experienced public opinion pollsters like John Wright. I mean, we're talking about like decades, okay, in the industry of polling people. And he tweeted on the weekend, and I quote, "It's over for the Justin Trudeau Liberals. It's over for the Justin Trudeau Liberals. They'll go massive negative, but they won't recover. Mark my words here." End quote. Well, John, I guess on the 20th of September and in the days following, we'll see how well that tweet ages. Okay. But this weekend, John Wright, one of the most experienced pollsters in Canada, said it's over for the Justin Trudeau Liberals. Still 21 days to go. And, you know, look at what can happen in a week. Who knows what can happen in 3 weeks, and the debates are still to come. I'm sure you remember, you know, Brian Mulroney had the knockout blow on John Turner, 1984. You had an option, sir. You had an option, sir. Remember that? Everybody remembers that if you're of a certain vintage. David wasn't born yet, so he doesn't remember. But if you're of a certain vintage, you remember, you know, widely considered to be the knockout blow. Mulroney, before that debate, was down double digits in the campaign. Up until the campaign, until the debates, down double digits. And after he delivered that line in that debate, it was over. And Mulroney went on to win one of the largest landslide victories in Canadian history. He captured more than 50% of the vote. So Conservatives must be pinching themselves. Liberals must be doing something altogether different to themselves. And I'm wondering, are we witnessing one of the most monumental collapses in Canadian political history? You pull the trigger on a snap election hoping for a majority. It might be the other team that captures a majority. But I have to be honest with you. 2 weeks down, 3 to go. I am stunned. I never thought the numbers would look like this, but that's how they look this morning. We'll be following all the ins and outs of it, of course, all the ups and downs of Election 44 with Trudeau in Granby this morning, probably any minute now. Will these lunatic protesters follow him to Granby? Will his event be canceled again? Will he have to speak over them? Who are these people? Where do they come from? What do they want? What would ever possess someone to follow any politician across the country just to yell profane things at them and wave nasty signs at them? It's beyond me. I do wonder, is someone paying these people to do this? O'Toole sticking to the GTA area, King City, then later Markham, Thornhill, so North GTA. Mr. Jagmeet Singh, NDP leader in our town this morning, in Ottawa this morning, talking about taxing the rich before getting on the plane and going to British Columbia, with the NDP trying to target one of the very few ridings that was actually held by a Green member of Parliament. So we'll be listening in, as we always do, throughout the course of the morning. See how these campaign stops go and how they handle taking reporters' questions. But of course, that is not all that's going on in the news. We want to cover a lot of ground here between now and lunchtime. Fourth wave, COVID-19, numbers creeping up, both locally and province-wide. Delta, we had 30 cases reported in Ottawa yesterday, and 740 across Ontario yesterday. But what do those numbers mean anymore, given the pace of vaccinations? And is it more important to be looking at the current situation in the acute care hospitals, and in particular in ICUs? Are ICUs filling up with COVID-19 patients again? The latest number that I have when it comes to hospitalizations and admissions to ICU is a province-wide number. Maybe we'll get some new numbers out in about an hour's time, but the number I have is that 214 people are hospitalized across Ontario because of COVID-19, and 158 of those are in ICU. And I can remember when the Ontario Hospital Association used to say the Ontario healthcare system will collapse if more than 150 people end up in ICU. I believe David told me during the depths of the third wave, we had more than 700 people in ICU across Ontario. That was kind of the peak, more than, I think it was about 770 or something in around there, Dave. Gosh, I hope we don't end up in that situation again. Our frontline healthcare workers have been through enough already. But to that end, we're going to get into, with one of the best in the city, kind of where we are and where we could be going with COVID-19. We'll be joined later in our program by Dr. Doug Manuel from the Ottawa Hospital, researcher at the Ottawa Hospital. He has been such a wonderful contributor to our program over the entire course of this pandemic. I spoke with Dr. Manuel this morning. He's not all that optimistic about what the numbers could look like in the fall. With people going back to work, students going back to school, there are more opportunities. COVID-19, very opportunistic. Opportunities for transmission is what he told me. More opportunities for transmission. And we're also going to talk about these reports that the protection offered by these vaccines starts to wane after so many months, whatever it is, 6 or 7 months. And will that mean the need for booster shots? Going to be doing that in Israel. Third round of shots for everyone. But it's the 8th month of the year, the end of the 8th month of the year. And for the oldest members of our community, you know, they started almost 7 months ago getting their first doses of vaccines. So how protected are they now? Should they be getting third shots? I don't know the answers to these questions. That's why we bring on the experts like Dr. Doug Manuel to answer these questions. Coming up later in the show. And vaccine passports, back in the news. Talk about wasted time. Sometimes I wonder what's happening with Ford Nation. I really do. Don't you wonder sometimes? Ford Nation spends all this time, the Premier spends all of his time, sticking to his guns, resisting this idea that we need a vaccine passport. Very little indication that there's going to be a move on that until Justin Trudeau starts talking about Doug Ford and vaccine passports on the hustings, and maybe this has something to do with it, then offering federal money to help provinces pay for a vaccine passport system. Maybe that has more to do with it. Because then all of a sudden the story starts changing and headlines start trickling out You know, people maybe in Ford's inner circle whispering things into reporters' ears saying, we're going to do a vaccine passport. We're going to make the announcement next week. From a hard no, we'll never do it for weeks and weeks and weeks on end on a vaccine passport to we're going to do it next week. We'll make the announcement next week. Maybe it was the promise of money from Mr. Trudeau. I don't know. He doesn't want to be a factor in the federal election campaign. He doesn't want to be the big bad boogeyman. He was the boogeyman 2 years ago, that's for sure. So we're going to get reaction to that news coming up in just a few minutes' time here from the local business community. And I think a little later we'll probably get some political reaction to it. Because all of this that is going on federally, we're going to be doing this soon enough provincially. Remember, the Ontario election, judgment time for Doug Ford, less than a year away now. By a year from now, it'll all be over. I am doing this morning's show along with David. We're doing it with a heavy heart this morning. Pierre Bork of Bork Newswatch, my dear, dear friend of more than 20 years, radio partner in crime, passed away on the weekend of a heart attack at home this weekend. Rick Gibbons, the former publisher of the Ottawa Sun, texted me late Saturday night to tell me the news. Pierre was just 62 years old. I have known him from my first days in radio broadcasting. That's how we met. He was hosting an afternoon drive show. We've been friends, and we were fast friends, and friends ever since. We usually chatted a couple of times a week. Pierre Bork never seemed to have a bad day. I'm sure he had bad days. It never showed. And a more curious man about the world around us, you just will never find. He was an internet pioneer in Canada. He was an online news pioneer in Canada. Here in our city, former city councillor, former transit commissioner, ran to be an MP once, race car driver, painter, provocateur. People may remember his missives at Bork Newswatch, like Heard at Highs. Used to be a classic, Heard at Highs. And just always wondering what was coming next and curious about it. He was big lately into cryptocurrencies and blockchain and NFT. That was really his big thing lately, NFT. I am going to miss him so much. It's hard to believe I last talked to him just on Friday. He was on our show. And it's hard to believe that will be the last time we get a chance to talk about everything that's been going on in the news. He was engrossed with the election. And I know you join me in sending along sincere condolences to his family. I will miss you, mon ami. À la prochaine. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So let's get some local reaction now to these news reports suggesting there could be an announcement on vaccine passports for Ontario. Later this week, Mark Kaluski joins me. He is chair of the Ottawa Coalition of BIAs. Good morning, Mr. Kaluski.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Great to hear. What is your reaction to these news reports?
Well, we've done some research amongst our members, and we've asked this very question: do we want a vaccine passport or not? And the results are overwhelmingly in favor of it. This is a touchy subject, full of minefields, but
yes,
I think it's important, before we even get too deep into it, to recognize that there are legitimate opinions on both sides of of this argument, and painting either side as being either pro-government or anti-privacy, doesn't serve us very well. But, overall, businesses really want to see, or at least what we've seen, really want to see a vaccine passport system implemented, just to help rebuild some of the consumer confidence that we see is lacking out there.
Okay. When you say overwhelming, give me a ballpark number, like 80%, 90%?
Yeah, we're between 70 and 80, depending on the day and the response we get. But we've surveyed quite deeply, and all surveys have depend on how you ask the question. If you say would you take a vaccine passport or a lockdown, then it makes it
right. But it's more 70-30 than 60-40, right? Yeah. So fair enough.
Which isn't to say that there are some people who are very firmly against it. Over the last 16 months, and even again, we're hearing messaging about Delta, and the fear and all that. It's really hurting our consumer confidence. People are afraid to come to our restaurants, come to our bars, come to our stores. You even see with the Red Blacks the other day, I was there, and they almost struggled to get to 15,000, and that's because people have this fear of catching this virus. So the more we can do to reassure people that these environments will be as safe as they can be, the more it will help bring people back to our businesses, and that's what we're looking for. And
a vaccine passport gives that assurance, that kind of peace of mind, right? Yeah.
I would say so. I mean, if you go to a friend's house who and their family has been vaccinated, you tend to go in and take off your mask and feel comfortable. And if you amplified that by however many people are in a restaurant or a bar, I think it just adds that layer of feeling like you're amongst people who've been vaccinated, and you can make that risk calculation on your own.
Okay. Should there be accompanying regulations with the vaccine passport? What's your opinion on that? In other words, you must show it in order to get into these sorts of businesses, or your business must ask for it. What do you think about that?
Well, if there's a province-wide mandate that this is, you're not allowed into a bar or a restaurant without showing proof, then obviously we would support it. Again, it's all about making, in our opinion, it's all about making the customer feel safe about coming back to our store. Instead of hitting the click button on Amazon, we want people to, in our neighborhoods, we want people shopping. So if it means showing something on your phone that says I've been double vaccinated, I can't see widespread concern over that, other than how it's implemented. And I guess at this point, we just have to have faith in the details of how it gets implemented.
Okay. Mark Kaluski is here, Chair, Ottawa Coalition of BIAs. What are your members saying about the current business conditions, the economic environment right now? How's business?
It's okay. The thing to remember is I think a lot of the public consciousness has moved on as this is over, but businesses have taken on $80,000 to $100,000 on average of debt over the last year. They're not at 100% capacity. They're still fighting all sorts of issues of supply chain issues, of input costs going up, of changing customer tastes. So, things are definitely not back to where they were before, nor will they be for, possibly even another year. So there's a lot of concern. The messaging around Delta and the scariness that is bringing with it to a lot of people is not helping our business confidence. So there's a lot we want to see happen, from the government, from the public, moving forward before we can get back to where we say, things are back to normal.
Okay. In terms of relief programs for businesses, what's most critical right now?
For a lot of industries, they still need cash. Some have been fine through all this, and I think a program that helps with the rent, helps with the labor costs, in certain industries that have been more hit than others, that's definitely needed. Obviously, there's a labor shortage, which has been talked about, on and on and on. We need some sort of reform on insurance premiums. Commercial insurance rates have just gone through the roof to the point where some restaurants can't even get a renewal. Some laws around commercial bankruptcy, about how that impact, a lot of businesses have put personal guarantees on leases and on loans, and now are facing this awful choice of, do I take that debt on personally? There's a lot that can still be done by the government. We're still advocating for it almost every day, and hoping we can get some more help out for our businesses.
Okay. Thank you, Mark Kaluski. Nice to hear from you again, sir.
My pleasure. Take care.
Chair of the Ottawa Coalition of BIAs, Mark Kaluski. The news next on City News.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. It's Monday, August 30th. I'm Victoria Williston. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 24 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 23, but both feeling like 31 with that humidity. Here's what's making news right now. The federal party leaders begin week 3 of the election campaign today. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is in Quebec right now before heading off to Nunavut. The NDP's Jagmeet Singh is in Ottawa before flying out to BC. And Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole will be spending his day around the Toronto area. Ida is now a tropical storm after spending 16 hours as a hurricane over Louisiana and Mississippi. Residents are now waiting for rescues from flooded areas to begin and damage to be assessed. Power remains out for the entire city of New Orleans, taking down the backup system. Ida's storm surge pushed so much water into the mouth of the Mississippi that it actually reversed the flow of the river. And right now, a closure on the 401 between Napanee and Odessa. One person is dead after a single vehicle rollover. 2 others taken to hospital. There's no word yet on their condition. The OPP does have detours in place. I'm Victoria Williston for News Anytime. You can follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Let's talk a little bit about how this federal race is going and get some insight into some of the local races as well. Fred Litwin is here. He's a longtime entrepreneur, author, and certainly watcher of conservative politics, and he joins me this morning. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Aaron O'Toole has he certainly kind of seized command in the polls with either a slight lead or a big lead, depending on which poll you want to look at. Certainly, not a lot of people predicted that, and he's running a different kind of conservative campaign with outreach to union workers, trying to certainly diffuse some of the contentious social issues to some effect. You wrote a book, Conservative Confidential, Inside the Fabulous Blue Tent. You've talked about the blue tent before.
Yep.
Do you get the idea that he's trying to build a bigger tent? What do you think, Fred? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think he's not only trying to build a bigger tent, he is building a bigger tent. It's been a terrific campaign so far. I think Aaron O'Toole has the royal jelly, and he's run an incredibly good campaign, very smart. And it's so wise. I mean, I look at the working class people who have been totally ignored by the NDP and the Liberals over the years. What a great addition to the Conservative tent. And O'Toole is making it happen.
Okay. Are you surprised?
No, not really.
You're not?
I've always liked Aaron O'Toole.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Well, what I really like is, you look at Aaron O'Toole, he looks like one of us. He looks like a regular human guy and he serves in the military. I mean, a lot of people can relate to him.
Yeah, but a lot of people wondering, what kind of Aaron O'Toole are we getting? What happened to the so-called true blue Aaron O'Toole that was running for the leadership? Is he true blue? Is he kind of blue? What kind of shade of blue is he, friend? What about those criticisms?
Well, I think he'll be, probably all of the above.
Okay.
I mean, he's going to make some people unhappy and some people not so happy. I mean, I think it's going to be a mixed bag, but I think he's doing the right moves to really show that. I mean, again, the goal here is for the Conservatives to win and then do something substantial. And I have to say, I mean, I think the platform for the first time in many years is really quite original and quite interesting.
Okay. What do you think about the Liberal campaign so far?
It's what you would expect from a campaign that has nothing to say. I mean, they are really caught flat-footed with a leader who looks like a deer in the headlights, whose only action plan is to attack the Conservatives on a variety of issues, which even the public doesn't buy anymore.
Yeah.
It's been a really bad campaign. They're totally flat-footed, and I think a lot of the candidates are probably slightly embarrassed.
Okay. And the New Democrats, just quickly on the New Democrats.
Well, I think I like Jagmeet Singh. I think he's a really sort of a good guy. Some of his ads I think have been quite good, but their solutions are always the most unrealistic of all the parties because they know they're not going to get into power, and I'm not sure how many people really buy into the NDP. I mean, I think they will gain a few seats, but they're really a non-factor.
Yeah. Let me ask you. Now, Cheryl Gallant's name is starting to come up on the campaign. So, what do you do with someone like Cheryl Gallant? Okay, she's a bit out there. She does peddle in kind of like these wild conspiracy theories, and yet when they count the votes in Nipissing Pembroke, that riding, I mean, she wins. She's won 7 elections going back to the Canadian line, and wins like by some of the widest margins in the country. So if you're the leader and it looks like it's going to come down to every seat counts, what do you do with somebody like that, Fred?
Well, I think I would privately say, look, tone it down a bit if you can. But I think the big message for Erin O'Toole is to go public and say, hey, look, we are a big tent. We're going to have some people who are saying all sorts of things, and I'm the kind of leader who is okay with having this big tent. That's what you get with a big tent. Whereas I would just point the finger at the Liberals. Look at them. I mean, you can't have a different opinion on abortion or a whole variety of other issues. We're not like that. We're different.
Okay. What races are you watching locally, Fred? What are the local races here in Ottawa that interest you the most?
Well, I think Ottawa Centre is going to be very interesting because it'll be a sort of an NDP Liberal race with Catherine McKenna retiring. And so we actually have Yasser Naqvi versus a strong NDP candidate.
Yep.
And so that's going to be kind of interesting. That riding went to the NDP provincially, and so I think the NDP realizes they might gain a seat there, and it's going to be a very, very interesting race to watch. Yeah,
I'm interested in watching that one too. The left wingers of Ottawa Centre, if you think about, and I'm thinking about, from Joel Harden kind of on down to Councillor Menard, Councillor McKenney, all the wards in the city that are part of Ottawa Centre, they're all very left wing too, and they're very well organized. So I wouldn't. I know a lot of people think Yasser's going to win that and win it pretty easily, but I'm watching it with great interest too.
I think all the volunteers from Joel Harden's campaign will be out en masse to help the NDP. So it'll be interesting.
Okay. So another riding.
Some of my conservative friends are definitely going to be voting NDP as a strategic vote in that riding.
Sure. Yeah. Any other ridings? Carleton, for example, that's an interesting one with Jenna Sudds trying to make the leap from city council to MP.
I look at Canada Carleton. I look at Nepean as sort of the two areas where the Conservatives could sort of make some headway and possibly do very, very well. I'm also, even Ottawa West Nepean. Vanderbilt dropped in the last election. She went from 55.6 to 45.6. So she really dropped. That's a possibility. But
and that one usually goes with the winner. Whoever whatever party is.
If there's headwinds for Erin O'Toole, that's really going to affect a lot of those races. Those races can easily go Conservative.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Fred, nice to get caught up.
Yeah.
You working on a new book or anything like that right now?
Yeah, a new book is coming out the next year and a half.
Okay, good.
Conspiracy, history of conspiracy thinking in the JFK assassination.
Oh, yes. Okay, another JFK-inspired book. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Fred.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, Fred Litwin, author and local political commentator. Mr. Trudeau, as mentioned, is in Granby, Quebec today. And he is taking some reporters' questions right now. And
forward,
let's listen.
Canadians can know that choice of either actually going back to the Harper targets, going back to the Harper approach on the environment under Mr. O'Toole, or continuing to be ambitious because we understand that not only is fighting climate change the right thing to do, it's the best thing to do for jobs and the future. That's the choice Canadians are laying out, and I'm excited about all the announcements that we've been making. And yes, our platform will be out in the coming days.
Probably not.
The Conservative campaign is pointing out today that Mr. Guilbeault is in arrears to Revenue Quebec of an amount in excess of $10,000. We don't know exactly what the amount is. Have you spoken to him about this? Has he told you how much he owes? And did he explain how someone who makes a pretty good salary as a cabinet minister could end up in that position?
I think it's probably a very dangerous path to walk for Mr. O'Toole to start trying to attack other people's candidates when we see that his own candidates won't even confirm that they're getting vaccinated. His own candidates are out there peddling conspiracy theories on vaccinations, and as we saw recently with Cheryl Gallant, on the environment. I think Canadians know how important it is to step up and continue the fight against climate change, to not even be more ambitious, which we are, but to also have a concrete plan to deliver on that. And on fighting climate change and doing the right thing, I'll take Stephen Guilbeault over Cheryl Gallant any day of the week.
There you go.
Je pense que c'est vraiment...
I believe it is quite puzzling to see that Mr. O'Toole continues defending his candidates who've lost any consideration or respect, people who refuse to be vaccinated. Most Canadians, a huge majority of Canadians, have chosen to be protected and in order for everybody to go through the pandemic. And there's sort of a lack of leadership from Mr. O'Toole and from Mr. Blanchet regarding vaccination. And this lack of leadership is just shunning all the dismissing all the sacrifices that have been made by Canadians in order to be vaccinated. So, but we need to have a crystal clear policy in order to vaccination policy in order to protect the children who soon will be going back to school, and by making sure that all adults are vaccinated. And this is our platform for the Liberal Party. Next question, Catherine Lévesque. I have questions for Mr. Guilbeault.
He's campaigning in Granbury alongside Stephen Guilbeault, who was the Heritage Minister. Probably best known in the last session of the House for C-10, the Internet Regulation Bill.
Come back, and they are being reused with the objectives have been increased.
Most of his comments during his opening remarks, were reserved for the Bloc.
Answer: yes. Let's take the example of what was said on Saturday, that we would be fighting overconsumption and obsolescence. Well,
okay, let's leave this. That's the Prime Minister in Granby today. If he says anything more, we'll come back. But I'll take Mr. Guilbeault over Cheryl Gallant any day of the week, was the kind of the killer line coming out of that one, I guess. 9:44. Back with Barry McLoughlin from TransformLeaders.ca when we return to the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30 odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. But yeah, it's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that Alicia balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's great to welcome back Barry McLoughlin, senior partner at TransformLeaders.ca. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very... Sorry.
Condolences on the loss of, your good friend Pierre Bork, and somebody who I knew and always enjoyed. It's a real loss for broadcasting, for media, for punditry, for a guy that really was one of the more intriguing people in Ottawa.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Loss.
Yeah, tremendous loss, loss, and he would be all wrapped up in this campaign, of course, right? Yeah. Now, most of the polls show the Conservatives and the Liberals are either tied or the Conservatives have seized the lead, and they might even have a sizable lead. So, what's not working for Trudeau, and what is working for O'Toole?
That is, of course, a very important question. This is all before Labor Day, so we have to kind of keep that in a certain type of frame. But there's no question that Justin Trudeau has spent the first 2 weeks searching for a reason for calling the election. And he's turned it into kind of more of a negatively oriented campaign in many ways. He does have positive initiatives he's been laying out. But a lot of his, it's the punches he's throwing because he realizes the Conservatives are the ones he's got to beat. So he's kind of off balance on his heels, whereas I think Aaron O'Toole has been very calm. I think the major thing that he did was to put that whole platform out really on day one of the campaign, and that's always a risk in world of politics because they spend the rest of the campaign tearing it apart. But I think it's held up well for him, and it shows that he has a plan for the future, which I believe is what Canadians are looking for.
Okay. He is, and people are still questioning, despite how effective the campaign has been. He is still getting questions about why he's spending so much time in this studio in the Westin Hotel. What do you think of that as a strategy?
Well, that's literally an inside Ottawa issue.
It is.
I think
okay.
Outside Ottawa, where he is not as important an issue. It's what are the clips? What is he saying to us? He's doing very well with these town halls. I think he's kind of mastered that. I've seen a few of them. I think at first I was kind of wondering myself, I thought, oh my God, you got to get out there.
But as Justin Trudeau was showing, when you go out there, there's a downside to that too. But I think he's doing a good balance of going into the studio for the measured, clear announcements that he needs to get across very accurately, as well as enough of the outdoor activities to make it a real campaign. So I think he's striking a very unique balance. We've never seen this before.
Okay. Now, how do you think Mr. Trudeau's handling the protesters that seem to be following him around and trying to be disruptive here?
I think it's a gift for him. He handles them very well. He doesn't look really stressed by them. He kind of engages them a little bit and uses them as kind of a drum roll for what he's going to be saying next. He's tying the protesters into the anti-science, anti-vaccine, anti-climate change, rolling it all in. He's trying to use them as the visual metaphor for those who just don't get what he gets about science, and so on. And I think also, frankly, on a personal thing, I think it shows him to have a certain amount of courage. He's willing to face them down. They did cancel one event, but he doesn't run away from them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something he learned that from his father.
Yeah, his dad did do that, especially in the early days of the Trudeau years with the separatists. I mean, throwing stuff at him and everything, right? So.
Absolutely. He faced them down, and I think that's people kind of admire that. It makes. See, the problem with this for the other parties is that, this is very dramatic television, very dramatic social media clips, and it shows him. He's able to push back very well against them. And I think on a personal level, people don't want this kind of thing in Canadian politics. They're even echoing some of the Trumpers, lock them up, and all this stuff. So I think it shows it's ugly, and people don't like ugly politics in Canada.
Yeah. So, but on the whole, you think he's taken that... he's making lemonade out of lemons, kind of.
Absolutely, I think it's funny. He's found something. This is a softball across the plate for him.
Okay,
and he forces the others to decry it. He kind of implies that they're behind it, which of course is very unfair. But when you have these kind of protesters, it is a gift when they're handled well, and I think he is. You got to give him credit for that. He's doing that very well.
Okay. So if you're Aaron O'Toole, I'll ask you, I just asked Fred Litwin about this. If you're Aaron O'Toole, what do you do with someone like Cheryl Gallant, who's kind of out there saying all kinds of crazy things, but every election wins and wins big?
I think he has to distance himself when necessary from the substance of what she's saying. Right now, he's dodging it, he's ignoring it, he's sidestepping it. That's fine for the first news cycle, but if they keep coming at him, he's going to have to absolutely distance himself, because those are not the positions of the party and the platform that he has led. So I think that he needs to, at some point, do that. He doesn't have to fire her as a candidate. I mean, it's part of the big tent thing. People are allowed to have opinions. They just aren't the opinions of our party and of the platform of what we're committed to.
Okay. So, you mentioned Labor. It's not Labor Day yet. And that's going to be the kind of the next big thing, and then we'll see what happens after that. Right after Labor Day, there are the debates. Yep. I believe they're the 8th and the 9th of next week. Next week. Next week. Yeah. In your experience, because you have a lot of experience when it comes to helping candidates prep for debates, how much time do they actually spend doing prep for a leaders' debate, and what does that prep kind of look like, Barry?
Well, with major debates, whether nationwide or province-wide, I have usually spent about 5 days of debate prep with the candidate, with the leader, and it's a lot of sorting out what are our key messages we need to get across, how you position yourself vis-a-vis the other party leaders, what is your strategy? Got to have a debate strategy, how you position yourself as a leader, how you position the party. Secondly, you've got to get them used to, in role play, what can happen when they suddenly throw you a quick question, and many have gone down on that, where you fumbled the ball on it. And I remember Russell McLoughlin was the leader of the Nova Scotia Party, he was the premier, and John Hamm turned to him in the middle of the debate and said, Premier, if you don't live up to your promises, will you resign? And Russell looked up to the left, looked up to the right, and eventually he said, well, that's why we have elections every 4 years. So the Globe and Mail's headline was, It's the longest 7 seconds in Nova Scotia electoral history. Everybody loves golden moments like that, and they are prepared. They are practiced.
Oh, yeah. The best ad lib is the one you rehearsed, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, we think about, the two of them instantly popped him on, and you had an option, sir, which totally turned that entire campaign around for Mulroney in 1984.
And Justin Trudeau did well on that in one of his debates when they asked, what's the magic number for Quebec 50 plus 1? He said it's 9, the number of
the Supreme Court Justice lot. That was a good line. And I think back to Jack Layton to Michael Ignatieff saying, if you don't show up for work, you don't get a promotion.
Absolutely. That's a killer line.
Which was really, it was totally in keeping with the Orange Wave. But
I think a lot of rehearsal is necessary because you can't just off the top of your head try to think of the magic bon mots in the middle of a debate. You really are. It's a tremendous high pressure situation. And, we do rehearse them, video, record, play them back, and get them more and more comfortable with it, how to distill your thoughts more. A lot of them tend to overtalk. You got to really distill it down. You don't get a long period for each answer. How to engage, how to ask the question, how to respond, how to pivot then over to the key messages you need to get across. That is all well rehearsed, and I think all of them will be doing that.
Yeah. So when you have somebody playing the opponent, do you encourage the opponent to really go hard after the person you're training?
Absolutely. I've actually played the opponent a number of them. Yes, you do. It should be a harder ride in the debate prep than in the actual one, because if you can survive that and do well in that, the key is to build your confidence, so not destroy it. So it has to be tough, strong, and they have to play it exactly the way that leader would play the issue. Not messing around. It's got to be done as if it were the real thing. And the people that play those roles, usually they're experienced they're experienced politicians themselves, and they absolutely are really, you get the ones that are really good at that, and it can make a big difference.
Okay. Well, 3 weeks to go. 21 days, Barry. That's it, and it'll all be over, and we'll see how it turns out. We'll speak with you next week, I hope. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
From TransformLeaders.ca, that's senior partner Barry McLoughlin. The Talkback Hour. And talk about this Liberal campaign. What's wrong with the Liberals, in your opinion? At 750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 24 degrees. It feels like 31. In Smiths Falls, 25. It feels like 32. And here's what's making news right now. Day 16 of the federal election campaign underway. Party leaders making promises on protecting fresh water and making sure the rich pay their fair share of taxes. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with the latest.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau speaking today east of Montreal, promising $1 billion to restore and protect Canada's freshwater lakes and river systems. He's also using the opportunity to take aim at his main opponent, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, and his climate plan.
Going back to the Harper targets, going back to the Harper approach on the environment.
Trudeau's event is quiet and absent of any of the protests we saw over the weekend when anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown protesters shouted obscenities and were very aggressive as they forced the cancellation and delays for a pair of events. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Ottawa repeating his vow to target the rich to pay up.
We want to make sure that we are giving the CRA enough resources by investing in staffing and tools so that they can crack down with enforcement and increase revenue.
Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in King City, north of Toronto, where he's set to make an announcement to crack down on animal abuse. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time at 10:02. The OPP has a section of the westbound 401 still closed for a fatal collision investigation. One lane, though, is open, and the OPP have also reopened the eastbound lanes. A single vehicle rolled between Napanee and Odessa around 2 o'clock this morning. Now, 3 people were in the car. One person was pronounced dead at the scene. 2 others were taken to hospital. The extent of their injuries is not known. Now, your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into some clearing today. Plenty of sunshine for the afternoon. The high 29, but becoming less humid. Tonight, mainly clear 16. And tomorrow, a comfortable high 26. Sun and cloud, just a slight chance of a shower. For today, the high 29.
And right now, it's 24 degrees in Ottawa, 23 degrees in Smiths Falls. With the humidity, though, it feels like 31. Well, could this be the week the province gets a vaccine passport? Sources tell City News the provincial government expected to reveal some kind of plan this week.
The Ford government is finally expected to bend, possibly in the next few days, giving in to intense pressure from public health and municipal leaders calling for a province-wide proof of vaccination system. Toronto Mayor John Tory has said a local or regional system is possible, but a vaccine passport covering all of Ontario is preferable. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown agrees.
I certainly don't think it should be city by city. That creates a patchwork system that is broken and confusing. And so I welcome the news that the province is going to be setting up a provincial certification.
Sources suggest the Premier and his cabinet will be meeting tomorrow to talk about the plan. Technology is available, allowing people to carry a QR code on their phone. It can be quickly scanned, proving a person's vaccine status while protecting their private information. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
City News Time at 10:03. No water in McLaughlin. The municipality confirms a water main break completely drained the water tower. Clarence Rockland is on site now. Crews working to fix that broken water main, but there is currently no timeline for how long those repairs will take. Portable toilets have been set up in the City Hall parking lot. Too much water from Hurricane Ida. It's now a tropical storm. Power remains out for the entire city of New Orleans. Torrential rain continues to fall over Mississippi now. 0.5 meter of rain is forecast. And the International Olympic Committee says Jacques Rogue, who led the organization as president for 12 years, has died at the age of 79. Rogue was an Olympic sailor and orthopedic surgeon from Belgium. The IOC announced his death without giving any details. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What's wrong with the Liberals? Let me ask you that question. Okay, we're 2 weeks down, 3 weeks to go, 21 days to go. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Mr. Trudeau called this snap election, and it's not going according to the script for the Liberals. What's wrong with the Liberals? Okay? The Liberals are behind. They're not used to being behind. Probably never thought they'd be behind, but they're behind. They are behind the Conservatives in just about every poll that's been released lately. What is wrong with this Liberal campaign, in your opinion? At 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Why are the Liberals losing? Why are the Liberals losing? I'd love to have your thoughts on this morning. I mean, the big story over the weekend with the election campaign, protesters. Okay? Protesters following Trudeau around. Lots of stories about that. Lots of stories this morning. They're not in Granby this morning. But this whole story about protesters kind of taken on a life of its own. Opinion is not unanimous on this one, especially if you're scrolling through your social media. Some believe this is kind of like a dark new turn in Canadian politics. It's never been this ugly before. Some people are comparing these kind of fringe lunatics to the same kind of people who stormed the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And that they're more than angry. They might even be dangerous. And that this is something very, very new and very, very troubling in our political discourse. But there are others who say it's par for the course. It's not that unusual. It might be unusual for Justin Trudeau, who has, for the most part, been beloved everywhere he goes. And I have seen them. Pictures being posted on social media of protesters hounding politicians of the past, whether it be, Doug Ford or Stephen Harper or Brian Mulroney. Jean Chrétien had to give a protester the Shawinigan handshake. So those people on social media are asking, well, just how new is this? So, I don't know. In my own opinion, I don't know. I mean, I wonder what is motivating some of these people that they want to get out of bed every morning and they're like, this is their life, to go from city to city and province to province and yell at the prime minister every day of the week. Every stop that he makes, you're holding up a sign with profane language that you would never use in front of your mother. What is going on in that person's life that they feel the need to do that? Maybe they're being paid to do that. I wonder about that. I also wonder, hey, have some of them been radicalized on the internet? Have they been sucked down kind of some internet-driven conspiracy theory rabbit hole about, great resets and, one world government and a dozen other things because they're spending too much time on Facebook? I don't know. I would like to think it's a fringe element, and most people, the vast majority of people are going to express their displeasure that they have with whatever government, whatever politician, by voting, and by voting for someone else. But I'm telling you, I do worry. I worry all the time, no matter who the prime minister is. I worry about their safety. Okay, just like when Prime Minister Harper was doing an event in British Columbia, and people got up on stage. He was giving a talk in British Columbia, in Vancouver, I think, and they managed to get up on stage. They disguised themselves as staff and got up on stage. I mean, within inches of the Prime Minister of Canada. And whatever you think of Prime Minister Trudeau, he's our Prime Minister. Whatever you think of him, he's a guy with a wife, young family. He's out there in public. Maybe you don't agree with how he's managed the country. But come on, it's supposed to be about a battle of ideas. Let's hope nothing more comes of this. That's my hope, okay? I hope it's maybe nothing more than people blowing off steam, but gosh, you'd hate to think it would escalate into something more than that. I mean, the big picture is the polls. Clearly there's been a shift in the polls from a comfortable lead for the Liberals going into this election to Liberal support falling fast, and John Wright saying it's over. For the Liberals, it's over. NDP gaining slightly on the Liberals, Conservatives taking either a small lead or a big lead, depending on what poll you look at. 36, 37% on the polls, a couple of polls for the Conservatives. That surprised a lot of people, not the least of which must be the Liberals in the war room. So how do you explain it? What's going on? Why are the Liberals losing? Why are the Liberals losing? What's wrong with the Liberals in this campaign at 750-1310? Albert in Canada. Albert, you're on City News. What's wrong with the Liberals so far in the campaign?
Well, I'll make it short because I'm calling in for something else. But I think overall they're mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. And their frustrations have been cooped up way too long. They're sick of the lies, the corruption, the scandals, the $1 trillion debt, the $610 million election, on and on and on. But the reason I'm calling, Rob, is I think a lot of listeners may not realize that the Elections Canada office is open. My girlfriend and I went last Friday evening, and it was extremely safe in the sense that there's no lineups. There was very few people, and I think the reason is a lot of people don't realize they can vote. They can go in person, and it's very easy. You go to the Elections Canada website. You punch in your postal code. Once you punch in your postal code, you will get your local Elections Canada voting poll station. When you go there, and in most cases is a school, you have to. When you look at the website and you put in your postal code, they'll tell you where to go, and then on the following page, it says what pieces of ID do I bring, who are my candidates in my electoral district. Now, the reason they're asking you about the candidates in the electoral district, and the reason that this may not be as public as it should be, is because candidates have, I believe it's up to today at noon, to register with Elections Canada as a candidate for that riding. But this is very important. The website will ask you to register. The registration is actually done at the Election Canada office. It's a 1-second procedure. The person behind the desk will pull out a card, you sign it, and from there, they'll give you a ballot. Now, the ballot, there is no names on the ballot. It's important when you go in that you have the candidate, and then what you do is you put down the candidate that you're voting for. It goes into an envelope. The envelope goes into the box. And the reason I'm calling today is because if a lot of people were to go, let's say this week, the office is open all week for most of the day. If a lot of people were able to go this week, it would just save down the road the lineups for people, hopefully the lineups
Oh, I see. Okay.
will get out
All right.
and vote.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for outlining that. I thought there were specific days for advance polls. But anyway, we'll look into it. Mark, Ottawa South, you're on City News. Mark, why are the Liberals losing?
We wanted to call in and talk about something slightly different. I wanted to respectfully disagree with something you said in your opening remarks this morning, but it's what history has recorded. It's this myth that the exchange between Brian Mulroney and John Turner on patronage in the 1984 leaders debate was a knockout blow that changed the whole election. I mean, I watched that debate. It was Wednesday, July 25th, 1984. I watched it with my mother, and in addition to John Turner and Brian Mulroney, Ed Broadbent was on stage. So there was 3 men, and it was very manageable. And I did vote for Brian Mulroney in the September 4th, 1984 election, but I was actually turned off by the guy, by his performance in that debate, because he was being sanctimonious and holier than thou, and everybody knew that he was already compiling a list of patronage appointments in anticipation of victory. And of course, once he won his big victory, he went way beyond anything John Turner had done. And I remember immediately after the debate.
But you don't think you had an option, sir? Didn't change the course of that campaign?
Not that much.
Not that much.
You see, I remember immediately after the debate, my mother and I are listening to the correspondents talking among themselves, and when the question was who won, one of them suggested, well, Brian Mulroney had an edge, and we both scoffed. But nobody said, wow, Did Mulroney ever get a knockout debate there? I mean, this is...
And why? Because they'll be doing this next week in the news. They'll be showing that clip on the news over and over and over again on a news cycle. Right?
Well, the fact is that...
Why does that stand the test of time then, Mark?
Because it's a soundbite, because it's quick, because it's broadcastable. Wow. The fact is, in June of 1984, John Turner was in the same position that Kim Campbell would be in June of 1993. She'd taken office after an incumbent who was hated at the time. And I don't believe there's anything John Turner could have done to avoid defeat in 1984, nor Kim Campbell in 1993. The only thing you could do in a situation like that is just run the best campaign you can with as much dignity and class and take the hit.
Okay. All right. That's a history lesson. I know you're a history buff, Mark. Let's fast forward to 2021 in this campaign. 2 weeks are gone, 3 weeks to go, okay?
Yes.
What's wrong with the Liberals?
Well, number one, the mere fact that they called it when they didn't have to. I think that's more than anything else.
More than anything else,
and
okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's absolutely reprehensible. These protesters, disruptors, harassers might be a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, of course, I'm anti-Trudeau, but the worst thing is to have nuts on your side, on the same side as you. They're no good.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Interesting perspective Mark has there. 10:17, City News Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show, 750-1310. Be right back.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit, but people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
right back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So we're focusing on the Liberals. What's wrong with the Liberals? No compelling reason. I've been saying that since the campaign started. What's it all about? Why are we having an election? Why are we having a fourth wave election? The Liberals are having trouble offering a compelling reason. Okay? And it's coming back to bite them. I've been saying that for a few weeks, and here we are. We're a couple of weeks into the campaign, and like I said, the lead that they once had is up in smoke. It's just my own opinion, but hey, that's what the Talkback Hour is about. Your opinions, my opinions. I think some Canadians feel as though they're trying to play us. Okay. And I don't want to be taken for granted and used like your little play toy. That is the prevailing sentiment, that we shouldn't be having an election, and the only reason that we're having an election is because of the Prime Minister's ambition, his desire to turn a minority parliament into a majority government, and people have seen through it, and they're expressing themselves. And he's made a lot of announcements, a lot of big-time, big money, big government announcements. And I think some people are wondering, well, why do we have an election to get moving on any of that stuff, whether it's $10 a day child care or hiring doctors and nurses and firefighters and pouring money into long-term care or coming up with a plan for affordable housing. You've made all of these announcements, but I think enough people are asking for it to make a difference. Good announcements, but why do we have to have an election to move forward with those things? What's wrong with the Liberals? That's one of the ideas of that. Steve in Westboro, what's wrong with the Liberals, Steve?
I don't think there's much wrong with them. Oh. I think Justin Trudeau has got the vaccine in this country.
Yeah.
Saved millions of people's lives, probably.
Okay.
Non-vaxxer, they're getting violence, and they might even attack our hill.
Well, I hope that is not the case, sir. I hope that's not the case. But clearly, something's wrong with the Liberal campaign.
We
Steve,
must be protected.
I understand that, Steve. I'm right there with you, Steve. We don't disagree on that. Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that have gone out of their way to get the shots to make sure their families and their children don't get sick.
Yeah, but Steve, so why have they gone from 34%, one poll has them at 27%? What's happened there?
But that doesn't matter. You know why? Because in the end, when they see the true colors of Mr. O'Toole and his colleagues, what they've been doing to Justin Trudeau, attacking him, the way they've been barbating him all this weekend, and the violence that could come up, this is going to end Mr. O'Toole's president to be the prime minister.
Okay, and okay, maybe that happens, Steve. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. I hope there's no violence, Steve.
Me too, but you know what? The way they're acting is like Donald Trump supporters.
Oh, it scares me too, Steve. It scares me too. Make no mistake about it.
Supporters.
But you think, and you're probably right to a certain extent here, Steve. Although one of the best-known pollsters in the country says it's over for the Liberals. It's over.
No, it's not
okay?
over, sir.
It's not over. I'm not saying it's over. I'm not the one who's saying it's over.
They can say what they want, but you know what? The polls will show it, right?
Okay. Well, there's only one poll that counts in the end, right, Steve? The one on Election Day. I got you, buddy. Okay, let's move along. What's wrong with the Liberals? Let's ask Joanne in Orleans. Go ahead, Joanne.
Hi. Well, I think there are several things. I have several points. So one of the things I think that might be happening, as happened on the Conservative side when Harper lost, is that it would appear now there aren't just waves in elections when it comes to our provinces and our federal election, but waves that come in international elections. And I think the left side of international politics has been seen and left wanting. I think that actually this debacle, this tragedy, this catastrophe in Afghanistan, which lays at the feet of Biden, regardless of the agreement that Trump wrote, this I think is going to have an impact on Trudeau and his lame involvement in getting our people out of Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to have it playing out on the news every night and in everyone's social media feed around the clock, I think it's highlighted for a lot of people that the Liberals are coming off as being more interested in winning an election than helping desperate people in Afghanistan. And, you know, if let's say, you know, the nightly news begins and it's all about Afghanistan, well, that means it's not about whatever Mr. Trudeau announced today, right? So you can't get your own message out. Now, maybe that's not fair, but yeah, it's politics. And if you want a friend, get a dog, okay?
Well, I think they come in waves, and I think he's riding a losing wave right now with liberalism and its effect on the world. And there may be a conservative wave that sort of lifts people up because they're scared and they're desperate and they're looking for an alternative. And O'Toole is a serious man and looks like an alternative. Now, Matt Gurney posited that the election is really a referendum on liberal awesomeness. And I laughed out loud when I heard that. And he said, Pete,
I could see Matt putting it that way. Yeah, that's Matt Gurney language right there. Liberal awesomeness, yes.
And they're shocked that people don't think they're awesome, so that's why they're deer in the headlights. As for these protesters, I am honestly wondering if some of them are hired plants because they are working in Trudeau's favor. He is handling them with aplomb, but what it does...
Oh, you think if somebody's paying them, maybe the Liberals are paying them?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Now, when it comes to Cheryl Gallant, she's quiet as a mouse on the hill. If you look at her committee work and everything, when have you ever heard from Cheryl Gallant?
Never.
So every time the Liberals criticize her, what they're really saying is, so all you rubes who vote for her are losers. It's about time you voted for a winner. Vote for us. She gets in with a majority because she represents a point of view. Fred Litwin said that earlier. Big tent means different perspectives. Yeah. But she is not a foolish... she's not a fool. She has her opinions and her convictions. And I want to know why no one has held the Liberals to account for their crazy candidates. Don't they have an SLQ terrorist in their lot? Don't they have an eco-terrorist in their lot? Like, why don't they answer for that? Is it okay if you're so far left as to with green issues? That's an acceptable point of view to be anti-birth and anti-people and anti-cow and beef. You know, that's okay. But Cheryl Gallant can't hold her views. It's hypocritical.
Okay. All right. Gotta go. Right up against the news. The news is coming up here. And that means it's halftime. Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. It's flying by today on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling in the low 30s, 25 degrees in Ottawa. In Smiths Falls, it's 26. Here's what's making news this hour. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau promising $1 billion to protect fresh water. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh unveiled his plan to force the ultra-rich to pay their fair share of taxes. Singh says staffing and tools for CRA will help get the rich to pay. Conservative leader on the election trail, Erin O'Toole, is in the Toronto area. It's expected he will be making an announcement to crack down on animal abuse. 694 new cases of COVID-19 being reported in Ontario today. 44 of these cases are in Ottawa, 14 in Eastern Ontario. There is one more case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases in Renfrew today. The case numbers come from 18,500 tests. The positive rate, 3.6%. Eastbound lanes of the 401 have reopened now between Odessa and Kingston after that fatal single-vehicle rollover. One lane westbound is still blocked. It was around 2 o'clock this morning. 3 people in a vehicle that rolled. 1 person pronounced dead at the scene. 2 others were sent to hospital. City News Time at 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, Rob Snow Show continues.
So we're asking, why are the Liberals so slow out of the gate here to the point that they've surrendered a lead to the Conservatives and are now forced to play catch-up? They probably thought they'd cruise to an easy victory. I think one of the issues at play could be leadership-centric politics, which is nothing new, but maybe is amplified under Mr. Trudeau. Okay. I would argue the Liberal Party is the Trudeau Party now. Okay. That it's Trudeau or bust. Mr. Trudeau is the Liberals' biggest asset, and he's their biggest liability. He pretty much single-handedly returned the Liberals to the promised land in 2015 when he was pitching sunny ways after the dark days of the Harper government and soldiers in the streets. That worked to less effect in 2019, but it worked well enough to get the job done and hang on to a minority. But now he's been there 6 years. There's a record to defend. There are people, especially young people, who've been let down and disappointed and feel misled or whatever the case might be. And after 6 years, some of the shine is off after 6 years. He's not all brand new anymore. And the younger voters who were so important to him winning in 2015, they're older now. They're 6 years older now. And the younger voter of today, that 25-year-old today, might be more inclined to see Justin Trudeau as part of the problem and not part of the solution. Mr. Singh is the guy now for some reason. Justin Trudeau, he has this taint because he's been in power. Okay, he's part of the power structure. You see, he's not anti-establishment. He is the establishment. He's the dean of the G7. Doesn't come any more establishment than that. But the whole brand of the Liberal Party is wrapped up in him. You see the plane, David? How the wrap on the plane? It doesn't say Liberal. It says Trudeau, right? It says Trudeau on the plane.
Well, what's this election
liberal,
about?
Right.
It's on your plane.
Yeah. All the literature is about him. It's his name. It's his picture. It's Team Trudeau. He is it, for better or worse. He is it for the Liberal Party. That works when you're popular, when you're well-liked. When you're not so well-liked, not so much. Leader-centric politics. Just a hunch that I have, that I think it could be playing a role. Could be. Could be totally wrong. Greg in Orleans. Greg, you're on City News. What's wrong with the Liberals?
Morning, Rob.
Morning, Greg.
I think Canada tends to vote out governments, and so he took us to the polls saying, I can't do all these wonderful things because the other parties are in my way. So give me a majority government and I'll do it for you. And on the heels of the pandemic, which people are still, reeling from and trying to deal with this fourth wave, third wave, and everything. People are not very happy. So whether or not he did a good job during the pandemic, I don't know if it matters at this point. It's people are upset. He's the government.
Okay.
If he did, so help me find somebody else. So here's Mr. O'Toole. Two other things.
Okay.
Last election, Dougie wasn't doing so good. Sorry, no disrespect, man.
Doug Ford, Doug Ford.
Yeah, they basically told them go hide in your mansion. And then we had King Kenny on the campaign trail with Mr. Scheer, which was kind of weird, honestly. Which kind of, I think, made a lot of conservative swing voters kind of think about that a little bit, and either not vote or maybe just hang out and wait and see. So I think that there's lots of factors. There's lots of good points that you and some of the other callers made too. I just, this whole Trudeau-centric idea, I think he really shot himself in the foot on this one, and I don't think he was really in touch with
governments defeat themselves.
It.
Governments defeat themselves, and he's doing a good job of it. Is what you're saying.
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do like this idea that you floated out there. Maybe Aaron O'Toole isn't as scary as the last guy. You're not the first person to spin that yarn. I'm hearing that a lot lately. He's not as scary as Andrew Scheer. Look, I would remind you, the Conservatives, they didn't win under Andrew Scheer, but it's not like it was any kind of disastrous performance. He won the popular vote. He grew the seat count. Trudeau and Singh couldn't say the same thing, but yet they're still there, and Scheer's the guy who lost his job. But, you're probably onto something there. Aaron O'Toole, less scary than Andrew Scheer. Could that be it? Social issues, especially abortion. Liberals have tried to go after O'Toole on abortion, but it just didn't. So far, it hasn't stuck to him the way social issues just haunted Andrew Scheer for the entirety of his campaign. But might be onto something there. Good point there. But what's wrong with the Liberals? Kevin, Ottawa. Kevin.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin. What's wrong with the Liberals? They had the lead and now they don't. What happened?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. So one thing just about polls. There was actually one out today by Nanos, which is the primary pollster for CTV that has just a 2-point difference.
Yeah.
I know some of the other ones do have a bigger lead, and
yes, they do.
I do think even though I do support the Liberals, it is a cause for concern. I think when people say the polls don't matter, I think that they do. They don't always get it right. If you look at the U.S. election in 2016. It looked like a cakewalk for Clinton, and she lost. So polls can definitely still change. But I think the biggest reason why Liberals are having a hard time, and a few people have said it, is because of when they called the election. The fact that we were getting into the middle of a fourth wave. I think a lot of people are having a hard time with figuring out how to vote. They want to vote by mail, especially a lot of older people. They don't have scanners. They don't have digital cameras. They don't know how to upload their ID online. They can't go out. I think that is probably a reason why they're seeing quite the slide that they're seeing. But I do wonder if some of that is actually maybe going to help the Liberals in a way, because I think that a lot of the people that are having a hard time with online stuff are honestly probably a lot of the seniors, which are usually generally more conservative. So I think maybe they're telling the pollsters they support the Conservatives, but how many are actually going to be able to vote?
Okay.
So I just wonder.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Kevin. Okay. I like the way you're thinking there. Okay. Let's move along. 750-1310, 750-1310. Couple of lines available on the Talkback Hour talking about this terrible start for the Liberals after 2 weeks. They're down. Darlene in Nepean, a wonderful place to be in.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Darlene.
I think Canadians no longer trust anything that comes out of Trudeau's mouth.
Okay.
Very little, actually.
All right.
No of substance or truth. And what took me aback on the weekend was a $100 million contract for an Atlantic ferry.
Oh, yes.
And handed over.
Made in China.
Yeah, handed over the Chinese. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they have Chinese contractors working on the most confidential files in health, defense, and foreign affairs. I think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you could go so far as to say that. No.
Yeah, I stand to be corrected.
Okay.
But I think what really affected most Canadians was Chrystia Freeland. Sorry, my voice. Chrystia Freeland. I always wondered, what is she doing with Trudeau?
Okay.
Well, that edited tape
yes.
of Aaron O'Toole's stance on privatization and
two-tier healthcare, yeah.
Was a complete lie, and it was edited to cause a fuss, and it blew up in their face.
It did. They got blowback for it, but they doubled down on it, though. They're still defending that. They're still saying Aaron O'Toole will introduce two-tier healthcare, as though two-tier healthcare doesn't exist already in Canada, or 3 tiers, or 4 tiers, or however many tiers we have in Canada of healthcare. Right?
It does exist, and
of course it does.
I don't know. It's just an accumulation. People forget exact issues, me included. And they forget the exact ones, but they remember how it made them feel. I really believe that.
Okay.
It's been too many broken
promises.
Exactly.
After 6 years.
Lies, interference with justice, with the Raybould case, and it just goes on and on. And I think what really blew up again in Trudeau's face, another bomb that blew up in his face, was calling an election during a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. I think Trudeau and his cohorts thought we were defeated, and we.
Yeah. But we've had lots of pandemic elections, though, Darlene.
No,
and in Canada, we've had lots of elections. I mean, how many elections have there been? British Columbia had an election. New Brunswick had an election. Saskatchewan had an election. Newfoundland had an election. They had an election in Nova Scotia. I'm probably missing another one. We had a by-election here for the city of Ottawa. I mean, there were lots of pandemic elections, right?
There's lots of elections.
Yeah.
It's like a person who has a flu. It's a little cough, and then it increases. It's worse. And then you don't have the strength to fight when too many things, debt. Where am I going to get money to buy food?
Right, okay.
It accumulates.
It accumulates. Okay, all right. I got you. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you. I want to take another call here. It's up in Lanark. Chris. Good morning, Chris. You're on City News. What's wrong with the Liberals?
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good.
I would say a lot of things, but I would say the most important thing is they've done nothing useful in the 6 years they've been in power.
Well,
they've devastated our oil and gas industries. They've devastated our firearms industries. And the list goes on.
Well, I mean, can you say they've done nothing? Can you say they've done nothing? I mean, they got the vaccines, okay?
That's the job of
a little late, sure. And I was all over them when they were late. But, swimming in vaccines now, the only people who aren't getting vaccinated now are just people who refuse to be vaccinated. I think the CERB should be wound down. But come on, that CERB was a lifeline, right? So you can't really say they did nothing. Right, Chris?
Oh, I can't necessarily agree with that, but...
all right.
The list goes on, though. They're devastating everything. The oil, just the cost of driving is going through the roof. People on fixed incomes can't pay $2 a liter for gas.
No, yeah.
It's ridiculous. And the fact that he says that climate change, taxing us to death on fuel and devastating our oil and gas industries is not going to...
Well, I mean, there's Aaron O'Toole. I'm just playing devil's advocate here with you, okay? Yeah. Aaron O'Toole's pitching his own carbon tax now.
True, but at least he's offering to give some of it back.
Well, you get some of it back with... Trudeau says you get some of it back at tax time with the Climate Incentive Action Plan, or whatever it's called there, right?
Yeah.
You get it at tax time.
Broken promise.
And you can spend it on whatever you want. With O'Toole's... O'Toole saying it goes into a green account. You can only buy green things with it, right?
True,
twisty light bulbs and green bins, I guess. I don't know.
I kind of hear you, but I just personally haven't seen any real benefit to this.
You know what?
Creating divide amongst people, it's endless.
For conservatives, I think for a lot of conservatives, they don't want anything to do with a carbon tax, whether it's O'Toole's carbon tax or Trudeau's carbon tax. But
correct. I mean, it is a problem for everyone. I mean, as a whole, Canada, I think, is like 1.8% carbon. Like, we're nothing compared to like China, United States. Numerous countries.
Okay. All right.
Taxing us to death is not going to help the climate.
Yeah. You don't think he's been good for the economy, and you think Canadians are going to punish him for it at the polls? Okay. All right, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. 10:45. Be right back. 750-1310. What's wrong with the Liberals? Rob Snow Show. 750-1310 on City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion, and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types: curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March, when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started, and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Greenbank. And so it was just a continuum of what I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now, with a world where people want to, quote unquote, be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type, really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside. We got you.
Back on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So now, one of the things that I'll be watching for from here on in over these next few weeks is how firm is NDP support? Okay. And can the Liberals convince enough soft NCP supporters to go over to their side? Okay. And say, look, you have to vote Liberal. Okay. You're not really going to endure another conservative government, are you? That's going to be the pitch. Look, the NDP's not going to win. Mr. Singh's a nice guy, but he's not going to win. He's not going to be prime minister. And if you can't stand the thought of a conservative government, then you have one choice, and that's us. That's us. Trudeau and the Liberals. And will we see this coalescing around the progressive vote around Trudeau like we saw in, say, the final 2 weeks of 2015? That was how it played out. Lots of people jumping ship from Mulcair to Trudeau in that election. That's very important to watch. What's wrong with the Liberals? Pearl in Kempville. Pearl.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Pearl. Now, you've been asking yourself what's wrong with the Liberals since 1967, so...
Exactly. Well, anyway, to start with, the biggest thing is his insatiable need for power. He puts that ahead of anything to do with the country, including the Afghanistan issue.
Right.
And I think that's, that says a lot about him. Besides that, all the scandals that this man has had, are people forgetting?
Yeah, but a lot of these scandals were, they were there for everyone to look at before. Jody Wilson-Raybould, SNC, Lavalin, blackface, all of this stuff. That all happened before the last election. The only scandal that's new is the we stuff, right?
Oh, it doesn't care if it's new. It's on his back. It's him.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
You can't escape that.
Right.
All those scandals follow him wherever he goes.
Yeah.
It's this election, and it was during his time and period for this election that those things happened. Or, he was in for 5 years.
Right. Do you think people have kind of reached a tipping point with the scandals?
But I mean, this last one, the shipbuilding contract for Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador.
Yeah.
The sneaky, underhanded way they did it,
Well, it sounds to me like they had no idea what was going on until it was actually in the newspaper, because they gave the contract.
The people of Canada had idea.
The people of Canada, but I'm not even sure if the people who gave out the contract knew what was going on, because they actually gave it to a Swedish company, and then the Swedish company turned around and subcontracted all the work to a Chinese company.
China, communist China. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they knew. I'm sure they'll never.
Well, okay. All right. Thank you, Pearl.
And there's a lot many more things that you could go on and on. The way they handle health care, there's no affordable housing. Everything's going wanting. They say one thing and they do another. They say, oh, they're doing a wonderful job, but we realize how important this issue is. It's important, and we're doing everything we can. Every one of them.
In other words, we have a plan for housing affordability, and people are asking themselves, well, where was it 6 years ago? Right? Yeah.
They don't do anything about it. They say one thing and do another.
All right, Pearl. Gotcha. Thank you, Pearl. Pearl has a T-shirt at home, says, Pearl, angry at the Liberals since 1967. She'll show it to you. Michael on Cape Breton Island. Good morning, Michael.
Hi, how are you doing?
Now, that Made in China ferry, how's that going over there?
Listen, I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
The time I was able to realize, I think that was about when I hit 8 years old. How old is this country right now? There's the whole problem in a nutshell. There's nothing wrong with the Liberals.
Nothing wrong with the Liberals.
There's nothing wrong with the Tories.
Right.
But the problem is with the very people that are electing them. When are we going to have an uneducated vote dictate what government runs this country? With all the problems across this country now, whether it be your last caller reflected pretty good. Housing, health care, you can go on and on.
Sure.
All we want is the truth and maintain the social values that were fought and won for by our own people through the sweat of their own brow. But today, you have an uneducated vote. When are people going to change? 150 years of Liberals and Tories, same old story. O'Toole the fool. How many times do we got to have Liberal and Tory government before people turn around?
Right. Yeah. So I get it, Michael. Thank you. You're from the school of my grandfather. The only difference between a Liberal and a Conservative is that one's in and one's out. I I get that. Mark in Ottawa. Well, today we're picking on the Liberals. What's wrong with the Liberals? Mark.
Rob,
yeah.
This election campaign was not going so great. Well, it was just kind of steadying along there for the Conservatives and, just all speed ahead. And then Afghanistan really pushed this over the edge.
Would seem to have. Yeah, that's a good...
because, you know, he just had Garneau mention there, I think, yesterday, that, oh, yes, we sat on our hands for 3 days. Sorry about that, but we're getting them out now.
Yeah, fair enough is the quote. Fair enough. Yeah.
And we have 37, he says we have 3,700 people out. Of that, 2,000 are Afghans and 1,200 are Canadian citizens. Is that since this 3-day debacle, or how long does this go back? It just sits on his hands, you know, like
right.
with every file. If the natives had a name for him, it'd be Chief Hand Sitter.
Okay. Mark, with that, I am going to move along. Thank you very much. I just, you know, when we talk about what's wrong with the Liberals, I come back to John Wright, okay? One of the most experienced when it comes to political polls in Canada, tweeted out on the weekend, quote, "It's over for the Justin Trudeau Liberals. It's over. It's been 2 weeks. It's over. Quote, they'll go massive negative, but they won't recover. Mark my words." We'll see if that's how it turns out, but man, oh man. I'm marking his words. Are you marking his words? I am marking his words. Jeff, Ottawa. Jeff, you're on City News. What's wrong with the Liberals? Jeff.
Maybe Canadians are starting to see the light in that, like anybody challenges the speaker who even thinks about it, the ethics, the corruption, his love for China is disgusting. Would you not, maybe Canadians are starting to think this guy is a little bit dangerous for our democracy? Mm-hmm. And I think the G7 feel the same way. That's why we don't have a friend out there. Okay. That's why we're having a problem in Kabul. Because otherwise, I know I'm a little conservative, but I'm going to say if it was Stephen Harper, those Afghanis would have been lifted out of there in March. Okay. As soon as the Americans said they were pulling, he would have gotten.
You think he would have had the foresight to? All right, we better get in there and.
He didn't think of himself.
Okay. All right.
His love for China.
Well, I mean, that's purely speculation. We don't know if that would have if that's the way it would have played out or not. But
I agree, but somebody would have did better.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Okay. Take one more, and that's it. We only have, and it's got to be fast. Roland in Brockville. You got a minute. 1 minute, Roland.
Yeah, I would just like to say that maybe it's not going too well for them because they might have a secret agenda. I think right now that with your previous callers, that the Liberals are in damage control. Mm-hmm. They know that if it would have went another, how long it is till the next, it should have been the election there, that would have been in worse shape than they are now.
Even worse shape. Okay.
And the only thing is, I have a funny feeling if Justin Trudeau loses the election, he'll resign. I
think if Justin Trudeau triggers a snap election that's going to cost $610 million, and he loses, let's say it's the worst case scenario in the Conservatives form a majority government. If he doesn't resign, there'll be calls for his resignation. He may be forced to resign. Thank you, Roland. Thank you for all of your calls. The news next. And then Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard. This is City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it feels like 31, temperatures in the mid-20s. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Federal party leaders in Ontario and Quebec. It is the start of day 16 of this federal election campaign. They're all making promises on things like fresh water and taxing the rich. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau kicking off events today during a quiet stop in Granby, Quebec. Quite the contrast to the weekend when anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown protesters disrupted his events by shouting obscenities and getting very aggressive in their demonstrations. Trudeau promising $1 billion to restore and protect Canada's freshwater lakes and river systems, but faced questions about his climate promises and why we haven't heard a lot about his vow to end the use of single-use plastics by the end of the year.
We absolutely continue to be committed to eliminating toxic single-use plastics in the coming months.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in Ottawa promising to close tax loopholes for the rich, but he was also questioned about why he refuses to say if he will shut down the TMX pipeline after opposing it and criticizing it for years.
When it comes to decisions that governments have to make, you need to know the assets and know the information before you make a decision in terms of what's in the best interest of Canadians.
Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is in King City, where he's set to make an announcement to crack down on animal abuse. However, his party has asked their candidate in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia to step down after allegations surfaced online of sexual assault. He has stepped down but denies the allegations. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:03. New COVID-19 cases in Ontario today, number 694. Now, 44 of these new cases are in Ottawa. There are 14 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. One additional case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases in Renfrew. The new cases come from just over 18,500 tests that were done. The positive rate, 3.6%. No new deaths being reported from COVID in Ontario over the past 24 hours. OPP has a section of the westbound 401 closed for a fatal collision investigation. One lane is open, though, and the OPP have reopened the eastbound lanes. It was a single vehicle rollover between Napanee and Odessa. Happened about 2 o'clock this morning. 3 people were in that vehicle. OPP say 1 person died on scene. 2 others were taken to hospital with injuries. City News Time, 11:03, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into some clearing today. Plenty of sunshine for the afternoon, the high 29, but becoming less humid. Tonight, mainly clear, 16, and tomorrow, a comfortable high 26, sun and cloud, just a slight chance of a shower. For today, the high 29.
And right now, feeling like 31 in Ottawa and Smiths Falls. It's 25 degrees in Ottawa, 26 in Smiths Falls. Utility crews from across the United States are all lending a hand now with recovery efforts after Hurricane Ida hit particularly in Louisiana. Here's reporter Victor Oquindo.
More than 1 million customers are without power here in Louisiana. In Mississippi, 105,000 customers are in the dark there as well. According to Entergy, one of the largest providers here in the region, this was before the storm. They said that customers in the direct path of a Category 4 hurricane can experience outages for up to 3 weeks. They have a workforce of 7,000 already here in place, and now crews from multiple states are headed here to help restore power as well.
Now, Ida is a tropical storm after spending 16 hours as a hurricane over Louisiana as well as Mississippi. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Every Monday morning, Geoffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig-Standard, joins me. And he's back with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, look, it's great to hear from you, Geoffrey. It's so often said, well, Canadians don't vote on foreign affairs issue in federal elections. They don't. It's for the domestic audience, a federal election. And foreign affairs isn't going to really impact the outcome of an election. Do you think it's going to be the same with this Afghanistan crisis?
We do know that Afghanistan is dominating the news, but I think you're right. I think it's usually domestic issues. Canada's, unless you're actually in a world war, Canada had elections in the First and Second World War. Unless it's something like that, I really don't think so. Because we've got the pandemic here, and then you've got the economic consequences of it. But that's in no way to minimize the Afghan situation, because it's very serious.
Yeah. And from your point of view, what are you focused on when you're watching the unfolding events in Afghanistan right now, Geoffrey?
I think, there's so many facets to this. Yes. Number one is the threat posed by ISIS-K, the offshoot of ISIS. Last night, early this morning, they launched rockets at the Kabul airport. Apparently, the Americans say that their anti-missile system shot down 5 rockets. There were no casualties. But the Americans want to get out as quickly as possible because they know more attacks are probably coming. We knew these attacks were coming because the President of the United States told us so. Also, there was a daring rescue, actually, by the Ukrainians of some translators who actually worked for Canada and the Globe and Mail, and then there were some other Afghans who were also brought out. These people had been trying to get out repeatedly, and they couldn't make it to the airport. They were on minibuses, and Ukrainian troops who are at the airport had the license plate. And this is all according to the Globe and Mail. They actually left.
Yeah, it's amazing. If I could just interrupt you. Mark McKinnon, this is the front page story in this morning's print edition of the Globe and Mail. Ukraine leads daring rescue of Canada-bound Afghans. Soldiers venture into Kabul to save translators who worked for Canadian media military. Mark McKinnon, being the senior international correspondent, reports from Kiev. Let me read a little bit here, Geoffrey. It's incredible stuff. A plane carrying Afghan translators, including one who worked for the Globe and Mail and another who served the Canadian military, as well as their families, has arrived in Kiev following a daring operation by Ukrainian soldiers stationed at Kabul airport. The rescue, which was coordinated by the Ukrainian military, the Office of President Vladimir Zelensky, and the Globe, may pave the way for other Afghans fleeing the Taliban to make their way to Canada. Ottawa's promised to resettle vulnerable Afghans provided they can make their way to third countries. That's in the paper this morning. So
it is an incredible story, and it also goes to the bravery of the Ukrainians. This is something Canada should never forget, because Ukraine is locked into a life and death struggle with Russia. Yeah. Russia invaded the Crimea Peninsula, annexed it, and then they're also the Russians are participating in this attempt by separatists in the Donbass region to separate and carve up Ukraine, and Ukraine is fighting for its life. So this is something that we should never forget and always stand shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friends. Another issue regarding Afghanistan is the fact is that the air bridge, the temporary air bridge flying people out, will officially end tomorrow. It's basically over now. The Americans are folding up their operation, and they're going to try to get out. So that means from now on, people are going to try to get out by land. And I guess the one area that they're really going to is Uzbekistan, and because they don't have a lot of Taliban checkpoints that way. And apparently right now there are tens of thousands of Afghans massing on the border trying to get into that country. But right now, they're only taking passport holders. And so I think the international community has got to have negotiations with Uzbekistan and try to figure out a way that we could support them, because it's not a wealthy country. They can't support all these refugees. Allow Afghans to enter that country and we'll foot the bill and all the humanitarian needs, because there are a lot of people who need to get out of that country. There are a lot of ethnic minorities, religious minorities, people who are secret Christians, LGBTQ. Just last week, the Taliban reportedly killed a folk singer just because he was a folk singer. So, in the 1990s, the Taliban outlawed music and dancing, and obviously this new Taliban, regardless of, all the public relations, they are the same Taliban. So these are dark days, so we've got to work with our allies. And in fact, I know today there's going to be a meeting of representatives from Canada, France, Turkey, NATO, the European Union, and they're going to be talking about these issues. And the U.S. Secretary of State is supposedly going to talk to them after the meeting and give them a full update on what's going on. So there's a lot going on. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees has said that, we can't just forget about this once the air bridge is over, because then the worst part of the refugee crisis will start. And a lot of this stuff will happen without the world watching. Also, the World Food Program has just flown in a large load of supplies, because Afghanistan is already in a food crisis. They've already had a drought. 1 in 3 people in Afghanistan is food insecure. People in some areas are basically starving. So just because the Taliban takes over, we cannot turn our backs on Afghanistan. We should not recognize the Taliban regime because it took the country by force and it's a human rights violator. But we cannot punish the people of Afghanistan by cutting off aid. So we can sanction the regime, we can have economic measures in place, but we should make sure that the humanitarian assistance continues to flow.
Okay. I want to ask you for your opinion on these people who are following Trudeau around. What do you think about that, Geoffrey?
It's very disturbing. Regardless of your politics, Canada is a liberal democratic country, and we have the right to organize and hold rallies. I was particularly upset by the images of that man, I think it was at Cambridge, was berating a mother and he looked like the little boy was 5 years old, for wearing masks, and he was screaming at the woman and child, saying it was child abuse, and you could see that the child was afraid. And I just wonder, when in Canada did it become all right to scream in somebody's face, berate a child during a deadly pandemic? And then the images of the Prime Minister having a noose around his neck. I mean, this is not acceptable. I actually reported some of these, some really offensive tweets that I think were promoting violence. I saw them on social media over the weekend. Look, we've got to, some of these people, the rabble that I see at these rallies reminds me of the insurrectionists who invaded the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And I think that this violent rhetoric could lead to actual physical violence in the real world, and I don't want Canada going down this road. It's very disturbing.
You think it's similar?
I think it's very
similar to the QAnon crowd and the so-called patriots and this kind of stuff. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. Okay, what do you know about this Chris Sky? Brian Lilly says this guy Chris Sky seems to be one of the main. I don't know if they're, because if they seem organized, it seems he might be one of the guys organizing it. Whatever.
Yeah, I do know Chris Sky has got some legal problems for threats against Premier Doug Ford.
Right. Yeah.
The guy appears on far-right radical social media programs like InfoWars, and I do know that someone at one of the protest on Friday had a megaphone, and apparently there was InfoWars logo on the megaphone. This is the thing is, these people are all conspiracy-minded. InfoWars is all about conspiracy, and this guy Chris Sky has repeated some pretty odious conspiracy theories on social media. And the sooner this guy's locked up, the better.
Okay. All right, Geoffrey. Always interesting. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye. Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard, David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal on some of the big local business stories this week. That's coming right up. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockets are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, a record center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad say, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats that every day, Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hintonburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I go, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store is about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. Y'all come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
David Sali is back with us this morning. He's with the Ottawa Business Journal. Talk about some of the big trends in Ottawa business. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Rob.
Nice to hear from you. What's the latest on Ottawa firms trying to land that big venture capital deal? How's that going in Ottawa?
Rob, not well right now.
Okay. Okay.
No,
okay.
It's
slowed. It's slowed a bit, David. Yeah.
It's slowed down. The pipeline there, the VC pipeline, as you might call it, it's slowed to a bit of a trickle the last, let's say, well, really, this has been happening now for a year or more, this trend, right? For years, Ottawa firms were getting the big deals. You remember Shopify, $100 million plus round. Ascent Compliance had a similar size round a few years ago. There were many over the last several years, rounds in the $20 to $30 million range. But over the last 12 months, not so much. We've dropped off so far that there's a company called CPE Analytics that looks at this stuff on a quarterly basis, and their first half 2021 report showed that, believe it or not, Ottawa, they do a list of the top 10 Canadian cities for attracting VC funding. Where do you think Ottawa appeared on that list in the first half of 2021, Rob?
Well, I mean, you would think, given the size of Ottawa and the size of our tech sector, it'd be right up there, be in the top 5 anyway. But
you would think so, yeah. Absolutely. You'd be sure. I don't know, because it wasn't in the top 10.
Wasn't in the top 10.
They only list the top 10, and Ottawa was nowhere to be found in that list. I mean, Toronto easily led $2.66 billion in VC capital from January through June. Vancouver, $2.21 billion. Montreal, $883 million. Kitchener, almost $500 million. Quebec City, $236 million. Then Calgary, Saskatoon, Fredericton, Burnaby, BC, and Halifax were they rounded out the top 10. So really, I'm not sure how much Ottawa has landed yet because they don't calculate beyond that. So
but these are volatile numbers, though.
Now
right?
these are kind of volatile. They do. Let's face it. These things go. It's kind of cyclical. I mean, sometimes you're just going to have a crop of companies that just happen to be really all firing on all cylinders at the same time, and you can end up being getting a one or two big deals, and that puts you from nowhere on the list to like the top 5. So, and even last year, if Ottawa was 5th last year in the first half at $83 million, well, that actually would have been good enough for 9th on this year's list, that total. So Ottawa, it's not like. We're not getting like we've been in a dry spell forever, but right now it's just we're in a low, I guess you could say. And I've talked to several experts on the startup scene here in town, and they're not overly concerned right now, Rob. I mean, they said the same thing we were just talking about. These things do kind of go, they ebb and flow. They have their ups and downs. So all it might take is a couple of these up-and-coming startups that are right now incubating here in town. There are all kinds of them, and we just need a couple of them to really kind of hit their stride and capture somebody's attention, and we'll be back on the list. So let's hope so.
Let's hope so, indeed. Might be another Shopify in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we got to hope. Yeah.
So, if our focus on real estate this week brings us to Lower Town. What's being planned in Lower Town? Nelson Street.
Yeah, Nelson Street. So, this is kind of a continuation, Rob, of that trend of transit-oriented development that we've been talking about now, seemingly for
forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
And certainly since light rail has been a thing, such as it is. And the latest one is a proposal from it's an Ottawa property developer, Smart Living Properties, and a Toronto investment firm, Forum Equity Partners. They're teaming up. They've applied to build a 9-story mixed-use building, so there'd be retail on the ground floor.
Right.
And that would have 322 rental units at 112 Nelson. So that's
rentals, another rental place.
Rentals, yeah. So Nelson, just near York Street. So, Lower Town, right near the market. A stone's throw from the Rideau Center, LRT, you name it, bus stop. So here's the kicker, Rob, on this one. I mean, it's the usual development application. We're going to have studio apartments right up to 3 bedrooms. We're going to have amenities, all that sort of stuff. And I always look at the parking right away, right, to find out what's happening. And since that's always a big talking point for these proposals.
Sure.
So this one, they're proposing 20 spaces for cars. That's not 20 spaces.
So 322 apartment building, 322 unit apartment building, 20 parking spots for tenants.
For not even for tenants, that's total. 14 for tenants.
14 for tenants.
For visitors.
Wow.
But 322 spots for bicycles. For
bicycles.
So 1 spot per unit for bikes. So you can kind of see what they're getting at here.
Oh, yeah.
So they're the target, it says in the design brief, is to attract young professionals seeking an urban setting proximate to the city core, and so they're talking about promoting healthy, active lifestyles. In other words, we expect you, if you live here, to walk or bike.
That's right. Yeah.
To where you need to go.
When we advertise, it's going to say no parking.
Well, basically, and when you look at the current zoning bylaws, as they are right now, you're required to have a minimum of 124 spaces for residents. So, I mean, this isn't one of those where we want to change the setbacks a little bit, maybe get an extra meter or two. This this is quite a departure from the current zoning. So it could be interesting to see what happens, when this one comes up at Planning Committee, what ends up happening there.
I wonder what the rents will be like. As well. I wonder what the rents will be like. What would you say? What would you say something like that is going to rent for? One bedroom, $1,500, $1,800. Nelson Street, maybe even more so than that on Nelson Street.
Maybe more because they're targeting those young professionals who have money. So it could even be more, Rob. But and what it is interesting, they're going to have a DIY bike repair workshop.
Oh, there you go.
In the building, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So they're really looking at that aspect of it, and it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yoga and do-it-yourself bike repair.
Yep.
Welcome to downtown Ottawa. I love it. Okay. All right, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Okay, Rob.
Bye-bye. David Sali is from the Ottawa Business Journal. He's with us every Monday morning. Now, still ahead, we're going to get the very latest on the situation in the hospitals with the fourth wave. It's one thing for these numbers to come out. As I said earlier in the program, close to 700 more cases today reported province-wide for COVID-19. But what's the situation in ICU? The last number that we saw was about 148 or so province-wide. Alicia, Robblee's been on the program before. She's a registered nurse at the Ottawa Hospital Civic campus, works in the ICU, and she's going to join us, give us kind of the bird's eye view on the situation locally here in one of the big hospitals, and Dr. Doug Manuel on the fourth wave. What's ahead for the fall? He is senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute. So all of that is ahead as we turn our attention to the fourth wave of COVID-19 in the capital. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 30th of August. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy sky, 25 degrees, 27 in Smiths Falls. The humidex is 31. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa's mayor and Board of Health chair asked the province for a proof of vaccination system. In a letter to the premier, the pair say it may be one of the best tools we have against a fourth wave of COVID-19. A shooting last night in southeast Ottawa has wounded a teenager. The 19-year-old man was found wounded on Laurie Greenberg Drive in Greenboro. His injuries are serious, but he's expected to survive. Anyone with information about the shooting or who has dash cam or security video is asked to contact the Ottawa Police Guns and Gangs Unit or Crime Stoppers. Ontario reporting a drop in new cases of COVID-19 today and no new deaths. 694 cases across the province today. That's down from 740 yesterday. The province says 44 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 14 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 1 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases in Renfrew. Updated local numbers will come this afternoon. Ottawa's open-air fire ban has been lifted. All fires were banned because of the recent dry weather, but open-air fires, including outdoor fireplaces, remain prohibited at all times in most densely populated urban and suburban areas of the city. City News Time 11:31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So let's find out the situation on the ground in the hospitals. We are pleased to have back on our program this morning Alicia Robblee, a registered nurse at the Ottawa Hospital Civic campus, works in the ICU. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's really nice of you to take the time. I really appreciate it. How would you describe things in the ICU right now where you work?
So we have not had a COVID case in our ICU at the Civic for a few months now, and so that has been a big relief. But unfortunately, time keeps ticking, and we have other patients in our ICU. It's been a fairly busy summer, for sure, and so it's kind of just been business as usual for us in the ICU.
Business as usual. So you haven't had any COVID cases for months, you say, at your campus? At
our campus, it's been a while. Yes,
a while.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And during the third wave, how does it compare to, say, during the third wave when things were really doomy gloomy there for a while?
The third wave was so hard for us, and so it's definitely a different kind of busy and a different kind of stressful now, for sure. Okay. We still take care of critically ill patients, and so that sort of never changes. But the fact that they aren't COVID patients definitely is sort of a little less stress for us. COVID patients were incredibly just like labor intensive to care for, and it was stressful. It was really difficult. It caused a lot of anxiety for sure. And so, now it's kind of like I said, back to business as usual. We one thing that we have been dealing with is just a bit of a shortage of nurses over the summer. And so that's been difficult.
And why is that? Why the shortage?
I'm not sure. I know that, in our unit in particular, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what's going on. It's definitely an issue province-wide. And I think most hospitals and most units are dealing with nursing shortages right now. So I'm always at a bit of a loss as to how exactly the shortages come about, in my unit, whether it's just, nurses who are on leave, nurses who are sick, nurses who have moved on to different areas, and then we just aren't able to kind of restaff at the pace that we need to keep as many nurses as we need. Yeah.
So it's kind of like out of a unique kind of busy back to your regularly scheduled busy. Is
exactly.
that kind of it? Yeah. Okay.
And it's interesting. I just read an article this morning about emergency doctors in Toronto writing an open letter to the province, sort of pleading for the pay cap for nurses to be lifted because they're dealing with such a shortage of nurses in Emerge in that area. that it's affecting patient care. And I think that that's kind of a sign of the times right now, for sure. It's definitely, we've been working short. It's kind of what I hear throughout the hospital, that everybody's working short. And that causes just a whole slew of problems, because then the nurses that are working are just that much more stressed out and at risk of being burnt out, because when you don't have enough nurses, you have to work, even harder. And it's just a whole other sort of problem that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. So you think this pay cap issue is also an issue here in the capital?
I think so.
Alicia?
I think I think it's a really, it's a very demoralizing feeling to think that other professions, like police officers and firefighters, have been exempt from that cap, and our rate of pay is increases at less than inflation every year, and you're told how important you are and how needed we are, but when that's not
you're called heroes, but we by the way, we're going to cap your pay. Bill 124, Bill 124.
Exactly, Bill 124. And so it's difficult because our job is really hard and we're mostly overworked. I think that's safe to say. And so to not be sort of compensated in a way that feels fair, I think leads a lot of nurses to kind of throw up their hands and say, well, I can do better elsewhere.
Yeah, like you said, demoralizing. It's demoralizing, right? Yeah, and kind of it comes across as duplicitous as well, right? You're a hero, but.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you know nurses who have left the profession?
I do. I know a few nurses that have left the profession, and more so, I know nurses who have left, the hospital. I know nurses that have gone, have looked for jobs in, the private sector, or in just less stressful jobs.
Less stressful jobs.
Yeah. Okay. So, where I work in critical care, it's shift work, and it's stressful. It's hard on family life, and so a lot of nurses sort of move on to jobs that offer more flexibility. 9 to 5 hours, and not having to work weekends and holidays. Mm-hmm. And that's the balance that they need for their mental health and for their families, which is totally understandable. But it leaves us short in the areas where we need highly skilled and trained nurses. It takes we have a group of nurses who are just coming onto the floor right now. They're just finishing up their orientation into the unit, and it's been 4 months. Like, it's a 4-month process to train nurses to be ready to work in the ICU. And even when they start, they're new, they're fresh. They require extra support for, when I started, it took me at least a year to feel comfortable, and probably 2 years before I was, really feeling,
You had okay, I've got this now. This is, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
yeah. So you can't just pluck a nurse out of anywhere and stick them in the ICU or in emerge or in these specialty areas. It takes a lot of time to train them up.
Right. What, if anything, have you been told to get ready for with the fourth wave? And if it goes, say, from bad to worse, how ready are you for it?
Yeah, so, the third wave feels like it just happened. And we had prepared so well for, the first, second, and third waves that never sort of materialized in Ottawa. And so when the third wave came, we were really ready. And it truly just feels like it kind of just ended. So far, there hasn't really been too much talk about what to expect if we see an influx in patients. But I think it's kind of because we know what we're dealing with, and we know how that will go if and when it happens. Of course, we're all hopeful that it doesn't get as bad as it did in the third wave, but I think the difficult thing right now is the uncertainty, right? That's been the most difficult part of the whole pandemic, is the uncertainty and not knowing what's coming, not knowing how bad it's going to get. That's really hard mentally.
Right.
So right now it's kind of just, crossing our fingers and hoping that it doesn't get nearly as bad. And with the vaccine rates in Ottawa, you'd think that it wouldn't. But this Delta variant is just a whole new ballgame, it seems. And we've seen in places, in other places in the United States and in other provinces, that the numbers are really surging.
Yep.
So it's hard to say what's going to happen.
And hospitals are are overflowing again, and there are shortages again. And,
Something to consider is that previously, the hospitals had stopped elective surgeries and they were putting holds on, certain procedures and stuff like that, so that there would be space in the hospital for that influx in COVID patients. And I can tell you right now that we're chock full in the ICU most of the time, combined with sort of the day-to-day shortage of nurses.
Right.
There doesn't feel like there's a lot of sort of room to give as far as whether or not we will see an influx in those COVID patients.
So what I'm getting is the Civic campus of the ICU is not filled with COVID patients, but it's very busy.
Oh, yeah. It's absolutely very busy.
Very busy.
There are always people in this city and even elsewhere. We get patients from all over Eastern Ontario and up north, Iqaluit. So we are always busy.
I want to ask you one final question, because we're hearing most of the people who are getting sick and ending up in ICU are not vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And how, as a frontline healthcare worker, you have to be able to separate that somehow, that it, even though maybe this person didn't have to end up in the hospital if they had only been vaccinated, yet here they are, and it must be incredibly frustrating. Just mentally, how do you prepare yourself? How do you deal with something?
Yeah, it's definitely hard. I wish that everyone would get vaccinated, and I feel like especially now where we are seeing such a clear difference in the rates of COVID amongst vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and the fact that hospitals are filling up with mostly unvaccinated people, to me it's so cut and dry, it's so simple. But obviously not everyone feels that way, and so we as nurses, we treat everybody no matter what, and that's the case for all patients. Whatever life choices they've made, whatever has landed them in the hospital. Sometimes those are conflicting situations, and we just treat the patient no matter what. And so that is what will happen when we start to see unvaccinated people in the ICU. We'll treat them to the best of our abilities, and we'll try to reserve that judgment. But it's definitely frustrating, and it's definitely something that will cause, a bit of moral distress for us, because it's preventable. The science seems really clear on that, and so it's people's personal choices, and that eats up a lot of healthcare resources and dollars and, the works. It puts us all in a lot of difficult situations.
Hey, thank you again for the time today.
It was really nice to talk to you.
All the best, yeah. Alicia Robblee, RN at the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus ICU. 11:43. We'll be right back with Dr. Doug Manuel, Senior Researcher, Scientist at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service. We're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not. If you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there. Okay. If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers, and we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now. Okay, so we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them. That like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, from like all over the world, and we source it through distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We're we sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to find, Cuddy turkey breast, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, let's talk about the fourth wave in Ottawa, where we are and where things could be going. Dr. Doug Manuel is back with us, senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute and a member of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
How would you describe the current state of affairs when it comes to COVID-19 in Ottawa?
Well, we're perhaps doing better than other places the same size, same city size in Canada, but we're on the increase, and that increase will continue as we move into the fall as widely publicized. So in some ways we're doing okay right now, but those cases are going to increase and the hospitalizations will increase along with them.
And what will cause that?
The increase, right now we're in positive territory for that magic R number. So even if we didn't do anything right now, the numbers are going to increase and increase exponentially. So we kind of know the drill, it's not too bad. It's, 30 cases a day. And then those cases, may increase by 10% a day. So, 33, but when you reach 100, that's 110. And it goes up exponentially. So even if we didn't do anything, because vaccinations have pretty much plateaued, we're going to expect to see increased cases. But we've got that big September boost that we saw last year, and that's going to happen this year as well. So as kids go back to school, parents go back to work, there's going to be expected upward pressure and transmission. So the cases will start picking up.
So more opportunities for the virus to spread.
That's right, more contact. So it's all about
contact, yeah. Okay.
More about how often we're in contact with other people, what opportunities we have to get infected by someone else, or if someone's infected, their opportunity to spread it to others.
Okay. How does this fourth wave differ from previous waves, if at all?
Well, yeah, we talk about decoupling, and that term is are we going to see fewer hospitalizations than previous waves? And we should see fewer hospitalizations. So because the vaccine is more protective against severe disease than transmission. So you may become sick, but you won't get as sick if you're vaccinated. The challenge here is the people who are unvaccinated. Those will be the largest numbers that are in hospital. And here, we're better than we are in the States. So you see these stories in the States, in the southern states, being overwhelmed and having hospitalization rates that are exceeding or will exceed what it was in the spring. We shouldn't see that here. In the States, the challenge they have is they have many old people that aren't vaccinated as well. But our vaccination rates in our older people are really high. And so some people can't get vaccinated, and those people could be in hospital. The challenge we have here from our models are the sort of 40 to 60-year-old, the people that are where the vaccination rate starts dropping, but they're still at pretty high risk of hospitalization. So that's sort of perfect storm of having enough people that aren't vaccinated in that age group, but still at high risk if they get Delta, that they'll be hospitalized.
Okay. What are the risks to someone? I'll work from the assumption that most people are like me. They've had 2 doses of vaccine, and they wear their mask where they're asked to wear their mask. They're compliant on masks. What are the risks to someone like me?
The risks are low. I would characterize them as very low in terms of being sick enough that it's going to hospitalize you or kill you. So that's good. There's still a somewhat high risk, 85% chance of not getting infected, but that 15% where you're infected, and then are you going to spread it to other people? And eventually, as our numbers increase, there's more infections in the community, the likelihood of it being transmitted to someone who isn't vaccinated increases. So the concern, really, from my perspective, for someone like you is, are you going to be getting ill and transmitting it to others, and we lose control? And then we have those who are either unwilling or unable. I'm concerned about the unables, both the kids and the seniors, the older people, whose immunization is, they can't get immunized, or their immunization in terms of the long-term care homes, they might be starting to wane. I'm concerned about those people in an environment where we have a lot of COVID going around in our community.
Yeah. For example, if these reports are accurate and these latest studies are accurate that maybe the efficacy of the vaccine starts to wane after 6 or 7 months, then you're talking about the people who are vaccinated first, people over the age of 90 in convalescent care settings, nursing home settings. Maybe their protection is starting to decrease from the vaccines. Is that fair enough, Doctor?
That's exactly right, yes. And we've had studies in Ontario that have supported that, and other studies around the world. Today I was reading that Israel is now offering a 3rd shot to everyone. So they started with their oldest people, everyone who's been vaccinated for more than 5 months. So they came out the gates quickly and vaccinated early. They have a very good surveillance system. They can track everyone in their country. And I haven't seen the studies yet in the scientific literature, but in the public literature, like in the popular news in Israel, they're talking about people who receive a 3rd dose have 10 times the protection of people that have 2 doses after 5 months. So I'll be keeping my eyes open for those studies, but there are accumulated number of studies that show waning immunity for people who are either immunocompromised, including our very old, or over time.
So where are you on this moral question of Canadians getting 3rd shots when so many people around the world have yet to get 1?
Well, I find it very awkward. I think when we talked last, I find it very awkward. Maybe there's a middle ground there. Like, we can vaccinate our most vulnerable people a third shot, but we really do need to think of the rest of the world as well. It's not even from a selfish perspective. We can't control COVID around the world. It's going to come back to bite us in terms of variants as well. So we're all in this together. We're all in this, big blue marble together.
So what should be our prevailing points of an action plan for us here in Ottawa as we approach the school year in the fall? What are key components to how we should be treating this virus right now?
Well, if I had a basket with 12 that I could put 12 eggs in, I'd put probably about 9 about vaccination. But I think what I'm hearing in the news is everyone's just talking about vaccination and not about those other things. And for me, the goal is to live, find our path forward so that we can, get to the senators or the National Arts Center or whatever we love, and feel like we're not risking our lives doing that.
Right.
And so I'm really interested in maximizing what I would call our non-behavioral interventions. So see if we can't do other things other than mask and distancing. And that's really ventilation. You know, like I say, read the science table report on education schools, and we should be doing that in small businesses and everywhere else. So greater emphasis on education in the States. There's talk about funding small businesses to upgrade their ventilation. I'd love to see a discussion here about that. Testing and contact tracing is one that I'm a little bit uncertain of. Like, it seems to me that we need to have a good discussion. Nowhere in the world have we been able to have control of COVID without robust testing and contact tracing. And we still have a lot of rocks we haven't turned over there, what I would call contact tracing 2.0. So, for instance, in New Zealand, they had some recent cases, and they said, yeah, we know exactly where those came from because we've done sequencing on those cases, and we know they came from a traveler from Australia. So genetic sequencing, more robust contact tracing. You know, I was just in the Maritimes for the holidays, and everywhere you go, they ask you, you know, your COVID symptoms, and also have you been to any of the COVID outbreaks, hotspots in the province lately. So every day they list where there's cases, you know, which restaurants or which public spaces there's been cases identified. And if you've been to one of those, you're told not to go in public. There's still lots of opportunity to control if we want to go that way, and if we don't, it's going to be difficult to control. And then policy like workplace illness. You know, all these things I just described aren't, you have to do it yourself. You know, it's better systems like ventilation. You know, you can go into a room and you just have a lower risk of transmission because there's less likelihood of COVID in the air that's being filtered out.
Okay. Dr. Manuel, always great to have you on our show. I thank you again.
My pleasure.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.